I posted a short of this painting by François Flameng made in 1888 called Bathing of Court Ladies in the 18th Century. And I wanted to say some more about it. I had more things to say than I could fit into that 1 minute short. And a lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound critical. So I want to just repeat at the outset what I said in my short, which is that I really like this painting. I like it a lot. I think it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous painting. So please don't interpret my criticism of this painting as, as saying that it's bad or it's, unworthy of consideration or it's not a great work of art. I think it is. It's not a masterpiece in my perspective. I thought it was the first time I saw it. It kind of hypnotized me. But on closer inspection, I started seeing some things that I think once I point them out, you will probably agree with me. However, that being said, I mean, what a masterpiece is subjective. So, I can't say definitively that it's not a masterpiece. And there's some just really gorgeous things about this painting that I still love, regardless of where I'm going to put it on the ladder of greatness. But it started when I wanted to compare it to a painting from the Rococo by an artist named Watteau. It's a very famous painting called The Embarcation for Cythera. There's another version of it called Pilgrimage to Cythera that Watteau did a year or two later. These paintings are seen as just pinnacles of the Rococo style and are widely respected by art historians, even ones who tend to be a little dismissive of the Rococo. And while I was thinking about making the comparison between this painting by Flameng with the painting by Watteau, it struck me that many art historians would scoff at the comparison because the Journey to Cythera is one of the most celebrated artworks from the 1700s, and it's probably it would be hard to make an allegation that this painting by Flameng is anywhere near as important or as mysterious as the one by Watteau. That is to say, the one by Watteau, the Pilgrimage to Cythera, Journey to Cythera, Embarcation for Cythera, whatever you want to call it, that is a masterpiece of the highest order, while this is, well, what would we call it? Would we call this second rate, third rate, a second rate or third rate painting? Now, that doesn't mean it's bad because, second rate, we tend to associate that with something negative. It's not first rate, but I mean, second rate is still, that's like the silver medal instead of the gold. It's still pretty good. Or the bronze medal. I mean, even the bronze medalist is a lot better than most people who didn't make it to the Olympics, right? But I think that the comparison is valid, even though I would agree with my hypothetical art critics who are who don't like this comparison. I would agree with them that Watteau is better, but I still think the comparison is valid. There's something similar in the feeling. It's just that this painting by Flameng is gratuitous. It's gratuitous. Its sensuality is a gratuitous sensuality. It's just it's shallow compared to the depth of the Pilgrimage to Cythera. Now, I don't really care that much. I think shallow art can be good as much as deep art. And I might prefer depth and meaning a little bit more, but art being superficial doesn't really bother me, actually. But the reason why I even bring this up, why I even think that this is something interesting to talk about, is because I think that if we examine this painting by Flameng very closely, it can show us a lot, it can teach us a lot about the late classicism. Well, it's a style I call late classicism. Most academics call it, ironically, the academics refer to it dismissively as academicism or academic painting, because it's a style that was associated with the French Academy. And I think, to be fair, I think most of the European academies, the British one and, the Royal Academy in Britain, I think also had a, very similar kind of preoccupation in the late 1800s with these sort of whimsical, more often set in like ancient settings, like Alma Tadema, Godward, and these sorts of artists. And if you follow my channel at all, you know that I'm very interested in this period, and I'm trying to bring more light to it. I do think that late classicism is a valid era of art and that it's been sold short by art historians. But I am going to take a stand and say that this painting is a second-rate painting in comparison to artists like Alma Tadema or Godward. And that brings us to a fascinating question that I have been exploring a bit for the last few months, not too deeply, unfortunately, not enough to really make any exciting discoveries, but I am fairly certain that a lot of these painters from this late classicism style used photographs to arrange the compositions in their artworks and sometimes outright trace the forms, I think, onto their artworks. And I don't really have any big judgments about that as a method. When a new technology becomes available, people use it. And photography was a new thing in the late 1800s, and people were starting to use it for all kinds of interesting applications. And one of the things that you notice with these artists who were using photography for references, and I think just maybe not even, probably not tracing so much as just using it as a reference, having almost a collage of photos, a photo collage for reference. One of the things you notice is that their depiction of light and shadow becomes very, very photorealistic. I mean, they're looking at photos, right? And they'll have to use their imaginations to imagine the color, but the values of the photos really tip them off about ways that they can create very realistic looking images. And yet that same advantage becomes a disadvantage when they are failing to notice that the light patterns doesn't really fit, or that the relative value contrast in relationship to the atmospheric perspective isn't quite right. And this is something that you really won't catch unless you've done a lot of painting yourself and you've spent a lot of time trying to master atmospheric perspective. You might not even notice it, but if you've spent a good deal of time painting, you start to be able to notice this. You start to be able to pick it out. And the best artists who were probably using photos as a reference, like Alma Tadema and Godward, they kind of hide that. They understand atmosphere enough to and light logic enough to unify the painting. But this particular painting, this artist Flameng, I think, is an example where you can start to pick out various poses from this cluster of figures that don't really, the light just doesn't seem to be right. It doesn't seem to be from the right angle or the right direction or the right value contrast relative to where they're standing. And that I found really fascinating. After I started to see it, I couldn't unsee it. And the whole thing just looked like a photo collage to me. And another thing that happens with working from photographs is that the work can look a little stiff. So if you compare it again to Watteau, who's obviously, he's not working from photos because photos didn't exist in the 1700s. The forms are less realistic, but they have more vitality. There's more life in them somehow, because they're all channeled through the imagination a little bit more. So anyway, it's just an interesting thing to notice, and it's the type of thing that, like I said, you won't notice it if you're not really familiar with it. In fact, when I first saw this painting, I was just impressed, and a lot of times of these painters who heavily relied on photography, that is the immediate impression is just whoa, wow, that's incredible. And for some of the paintings, it stays incredible. For most of Alma Tadema's work or Godward's work, it's just incredible. But then there's others like this one that you start to look and you start to see and you start to say, oh yeah, there really isn't much of a overall light logic here. In fact, if you look at the colonnade in the background and just sort of like the whole scene taken together, it seems like there's really no sense of light direction, which is fine. I'm not like saying, oh, that's a horrible thing. There must always be. It's just that it makes it a little obvious what he's doing, in the sense that we can see that he made the light feel very diffused and like omnidirectional, like coming from all directions, so that he wouldn't have to contend with this issue of having to unify the light direction from all his photo references. And again, that's not to say that there aren't wonderful moments of painting in this artwork. I mentioned the base of the statue, this fountain, in the YouTube short that I made. And I just love the light, the feeling of light and shadow in that. It's just absolutely I don't know, it's spectacular. And again, the overall impression, if you just look at it kind of with some distance, it's very pleasing, and it's very nice. It's just when you zoom in and you start to see these different figures not quite feeling, they start to look flat. It starts to look, like I said, like a photo collage, which I don't know. It's interesting, right? It doesn't make me hate the artwork. I don't dislike it or like it any less. It's just an interesting thing to notice. But anyway, I think that coupled with the fact that, yes, it is kind of a superficial subject matter, it doesn't really seem to be any deep meaning here, that makes this second or even third-rate painting. And again, I'm not saying that third-rate is really bad. It's bronze medal, so it's still a pretty big cut above a lot of other paintings in the world. It's just not. I don't think it's quite Olympic gold medal status the way that Watteau's paintings are. What do you think? I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Maybe you feel the opposite. Maybe you like this better than Watteau, or maybe you have some other thoughts. Whatever you think, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see what your feelings are on this one. Hopefully, at the very least, you appreciated me just bringing this image out, dusting it off, and showing it to you. So I hope you come back around for the next one. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I really appreciate it if you do. My channel is not monetized, but I do have a book you can buy, and it's called Thoughts. If you want to find it, just look up Brian D.K. Thoughts on Amazon. But make sure you have books selected when you search Brian D.K. Thoughts, otherwise it won't show up. It has around 150 illustrations. It took me about 10 years to make it, and it really is just a collection of random thoughts, thoughts on many different subjects, ranging from mortality, romance, quasi-philosophical issues. It's full of my art, so if you're interested in seeing my own drawings, then there's many, many examples in this book. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ciao for now.